by the time that they're just 5 years old. With me now to discuss is the Director of Government Affairs for the American Principles Project, Jon Schweppe. Welcome back, Jon.
Kara, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Right, so as I mentioned, out of all of Biden's cabinet appointments, this one may be the most radical yet, and that's saying a lot. So what do Levine's extreme views on gender potentially mean for parents and for children moving forward should the nomination be approved?
Well, I think a lot of folks are focused on the big nominations, right, like Xavier Becerra, but this is a very powerful position. The Assistant Secretary of Health oversees adolescent health, oversees the Surgeon General. And so there's a lot that will come out of this office, especially as it does relate to this. You know, this is science that really has not been settled. And folks are going to find really quickly that this is going to be a political office that will be pushing this stuff on parents and on doctors.
What really concerns me is the emphasis here on going around parental consent, not even needing psychological evaluations for a lot of these children. It seems like what we're seeing from the radical left is putting a wedge and dividing children away from their parents. Is that kind of what we're seeing here from some of the rhetoric that Levine's been saying?
It's very dangerous and very scary. I mean, what we're talking about here, you know, you have these mandatory reporters at schools and that sort of thing where, you know, a kid comes home and they say, hey, my nurse talked to me today about gender. And I said, well, I identify as the other sex. Well, now all of a sudden that child might be locked into a path towards, you know, gender transition. I mean, this is really scary stuff. And it's really, you know, ultimately just not appropriate for folks, you know, kids under the age of 18 to be partaking in this. You know, when you're 18 or older, if this is a road you want to go down, maybe that's a different decision. But that's not what we're talking about here. We are actually talking about sex changes for kids. And specifically, you're talking about puberty blockers at the age of 8, cross-sex hormones at the ages of 14, 15 years old. I mean, this is beyond the pale, and I think it's important that senators speak out about this.
And some of these changes that these minors can be pressured into, because we know how kids, they change their mind all the time. We see kids who think that they're dogs, think that they're other animals, think that they can fly, think that they're superheroes. Kids think and say a lot of stuff. And when they're so young, if we start putting them on all sorts of hormone blockers and giving them hormones when they're so young and when they hit their preteen years, a lot of it can cause changes that don't necessarily just go away if they change their mind at a later date. But what we're seeing now is we're seeing Biden's other pick for the Attorney General, Merrick Garland, when he was asked about protecting women's sports, for example, in schools, he wouldn't commit to that either. So we're seeing the breakdown of women's sports as well. Many people look at the radical LGBTQ movement and think the rights of real women, of biological women, I should say, they're largely being erased from this radical trans movement that we're seeing.
No, that's absolutely right. You hit the nail on the head. I mean, we're seeing this week, Thursday, the House will be voting on the Equality Act, which is one of the most extreme pieces of legislation we've ever seen. And it does exactly what you said. It erases women, you know, especially with this gender identity stuff. What it does is it replaces sex in civil rights law. And it makes it where a man can basically say or do whatever he wants to get anywhere he wants. I mean, that's a problem. You know, we don't want to see that happening. So I think it's good that we expose this stuff. Democrats are purposely being cagey on these issues because they know they're tremendously unpopular. And as long as Republicans are willing to fight and expose where they stand on these issues, I think we'll be in a good spot.
And even aside from this whole issue of children and transitioning genders, just the fact that while Levine was in Pennsylvania as Secretary of Health there, that we saw the nursing homes there having COVID-infected patients brought into the nursing homes. And of course, we saw Levine bringing his parents out of the nursing homes there to protect them. That should be disqualifying in and of itself.
Oh, absolutely. I love that you brought that up because this is just unconscionable. We're talking about someone who argued that it was good to put COVID patients in with the elderly and the infirmed in nursing homes, condemning how many people to death. It's incredible. But then at the same time, taking their parent out. It just kind of shows like the depravity of it. And, you know, really, this is someone who's not fit for this position. And I think it's important that Thursday at the Health Committee hearing that Republican senators expose that and really show, you know, where this person is, where their record is.
Yeah, this is definitely just a political, very political appointment. But, Jon, always a pleasure having you on. Thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you, Kara.
And up next, religious liberties are once again coming under attack.